it used to really frustrate me. Now I'm like, this is the reality. So let me just do what needs to be done faithfully, sincerely, and relentlessly, and get to where I need to get to. I if I was relying on the affirmation from the world, then I wouldn't be able to get through a single day. So I'm focusing on getting through every single day.
So welcome to our webinar series on the hero's journey with our lovely host, Avril. Today we have with us a special guest, very, very inspiring Anu. She works for one of the most prominent international organizations that works towards the rescue and rehabilitation of individuals trapped in slavery and bringing criminals to justice. As a result of Anu's leadership, 10,000 individuals have been rescued from forced labor slavery. It's so lovely to have you here with us, Anu, and it's extremely inspiring to know about the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for taking the time out. We welcome you to the webinar, and I'll now invite Avril to take over.
Thank you so much, Kiva. Welcome, Anu. Thank you for agreeing to do this, first of all. I'm so honored to have you here after reading and understanding the work that you do through our mutual friend Ashwin Matthew. I call Ashwin the gift that keeps giving. Because, see, there's no other way to describe him. He was my second guest on the podcast, and he said, I know just the person for your tribe. She's going to be just the right fit. And he couldn't be further from the truth. You are everything that our community would really appreciate. I would describe you as a fierce warrior. I would describe you as somebody with a big heart and somebody who's just, making this world a better place for all of us. I know you help not just children, but men and women who are in trafficking, who are trapped in trafficking, in slavery. And I would just like you to introduce yourself in terms of your latest achievement with the Canadian Parliament. So before I hand it over to you, I just want to welcome my tribe, welcome coaches, MCC, PCC, ACC, even if you're not a coach, welcome to Coacharia, and welcome to the Hero's Journey, where we talk to ordinary people doing extraordinary acts of service to make their mark in this world, not from a place of ego, but from a place of giving and service. And now I hand you over to Anu George.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. Good morning, afternoon, evening to everyone who's joining in. My name is Anu George Kanjinathopal, and I get to serve as the CEO of International Justice Mission Canada. Been in this space for, I think, almost 2 decades, and absolutely, love the journey that I was on, the journey that got me here. So really glad to be here. You asked me specifically to talk a bit more about the latest initiative. It's such an honor that my role at IJM allows me to partner with people who care about what's going on in our world. Recently, we had the opportunity to work with the governments, corporations, and nonprofit organizations to see a policy change be enacted. After almost a decade of advocacy, and none of this work can be done in the absence of advocacy. Specifically what we've been trying to do in Canada is working towards the Canada's Modern Slavery Act. Formerly, it was known as Bill S-11, an act to enact the Fighting Against Forced Labor and Child Labor in Supply Chains Act, and to amend the customs tariff to become a law. I know it sounds very technical. It is basically ensuring that the goods that we procure from all over the world, being in Canada, does not have a price that is more than what we can see. For instance, if I was, buying something, if it has got the strains of slavery, then it's a lot more expensive than the $20 that we are purchasing the goods for. So this bill was absolutely crucial to impact change around the world. So this law provides the Canadian government and corporations with concrete and meaningful ways to ensure that their supply chains are absolutely free from forced and child labor. There are approximately 27.6 million people trapped in forced labor slavery, and the latest estimates indicate that there are more than 160 million children involved in child labor. And I mean, this sort of exploitation threatens a person's safety, health, in some cases their lives. It's for children, the impact of doing dangerous or risky jobs has a lasting impact on their physical, mental, social development, and impeding their ability to lead healthy adult lives. It's unbelievable. So the Canadian customers or consumers want to be confident that they are not just contributing to forced labor or child labor. So International Justice Mission, along with other organizations who have pressed the government to create this kind of law, are pleased that this action has finally been taken. So we've been advocating for this bill since it was introduced in the Senate in 2018. So we believe that Canadian corporations are sourcing supplies or final products from countries using forced labor or child labor must change, and doing so have the opportunity to positively impact justice system reform. So this would be a model for other countries to follow, hopefully. I keep speaking, don't I? I'm so sorry, Avril. I should let you ask.
You're supposed to speak. I'm the one who's supposed to ask crisp questions. You're supposed to conduct only monologues.
Okay.
No,
the monologue ends now.
Thank you, Anu. I just want to say one thing that, we talk so much about, wanting to be fair, and we'd like an ideal world, and we want a utopian world. But a lot of us are oblivious to the goods that we're buying. There's no real conscientiousness. And it's not particularly because we are, not bothered or we don't care. It's just that we don't know.
No.
We don't know. And with people like you who have to do their due diligence and who have to track down people, and, everything is like it's like a link in a chain, everything is linked to something. I mean, I just want to say I want to acknowledge how incredibly difficult this must be for you, and to take this on as the first female South Asian CEO in a leadership position at the International Justice Mission Canada. I'm just wondering, it's such a tall order. What inspired you to get into this field?
Thank you. I've been asked this question several times, but this is the first time somebody has asked it in a way that it has hit me as deeply. Well, it was my personal experience with violence that revealed a world I never knew existed. I mean, for the longest time, I felt I had to show up because I did not have anyone show up for me. A decade and a half ago, when I was introduced to the work of IJM, it just broke my heart in a way that I cannot quite articulate. What drew me closer to those who were suffering in trafficking was their inability to draw close to hope. So it just felt like a natural response that a survivor of violence would have, for me to invite them to a space where I experienced hope. And what keeps me excited about doing this work is to see people, once victims of sex trafficking, walk into those very same brothels and tell others who are still victims that there exists hope and that she is evidence. What brought me in is all of this, this pain of being trapped in a cycle of violence, or just being surprised with violence every single time that I was trying to use free theater as a means to invite young children into the space of education. But than having to come face to face with violence, which taught me, which was basically the interruption in the cycle of me seeking justice time after time after time. So what got me in there into the space was that, and then realizing that to end poverty, you know, or you needed to end violence. You absolutely needed to end violence, because you could be building wells for women to go and draw water out of that. You could be giving them access to free education. You could be doing all of these things. But if a child who's 8-year-old gets raped on the way to school, if a woman is sexually exploited on the way to drawing water from the well, if the benefits cannot reach any of these people simply because there is this more powerful, highly impugned person who can just get away with whatever he or she is able to do, because there is no fear of the implications or the consequences. Well, that drew me, like just the audacity that and the impunity that you can get away with such a heinous crime brought me in to that space. But what keeps me here are the stories of hope. We tend to confuse the darkness of this world with a space we may want to avoid journeying into. But almost 2 decades after doing this, I would be lying if I say that the light does not overcome the darkness. Yeah, that keeps me sane. That keeps me here.
Wow, thank you. I can see a lot of hearts coming in, people resonating with you on the chat. Something really struck me about what you said. Number one, there is a kind of a sympathetic element, and I'm sorry to hear that you experienced what you experienced, but there is that element where you're not looking at it from a disassociative state. You are looking at it from a completely associative state. And that's kind of bringing your heart and soul into it. And the one line that really stood out for me when you were speaking now, Anu, is you said that she is evidence. You may tell people, you may cajole them, you may show them the way, but when one of their own walks into the space and says, if I can do it, you can do it. And that evidence is so important, especially for women, because, they gain strength from another woman if they're in a dark place. And, it's just, it's absolutely, the more you talk, the more I'm gobsmacked at, what phenomenal work you're doing. And it's like you're so out of your comfort zone in the sense of what this calls for and, what your giving is, but you seem to be so comfortable with it.
I think that has become my new comfort space. Like the more challenging it gets, I'm like, I'm at home now. If things are getting super easy, I'm like, oh, this is weird. Like, I don't fit in. Like, yeah.
I absolutely can understand what you're saying. So my next question is challenges. Could you share with us some of the challenges that you have faced as a woman breaking through barriers in the corporate world, particularly in the context of the international justice and human rights space?
Oh my, I could speak for hours on this topic. Like for the longest time, maybe even now, I've been seen as being overly ambitious and aggressive, in contrast to how men would be perceived if they were doing the same thing. My passion is seen as being overly emotional, or my sense of urgency has been seen as being overly ambitious. I think I've learned to walk this as my everyday reality. The more you come to terms with this is how you're going to be perceived, regardless of what you say or how you perform, you feel less pressure to be someone else or something else. And like you mentioned, being completely comfortable in my skin required some training. And that has involved having thick skin when receiving unwanted comments and sidelining conversations when necessary. And I see it, right? My job requires me to be the face of the organization to talk about these issues. So sometimes on social media, it's not like I love being out there. Absolutely not. I'm an introvert, though people do not believe, but I do this because my work requires me to bring more people into this fight. And some of these things that you have to hear on social media, simply because you're a woman, just like there is absolutely no other qualifier to be taunted and abused on social media, like just directing all of that negativity to you. I think it has been easier to accept that as the reality and stop trying to fight it. Like, I've got bigger battles to, be armed for. These unseen or sometimes very visible challenges in the field. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna pretend that I can solve it, but show up. There have been rescue operations where I would have conversations with these officials, and they would not look at my face. I would ask the question, and they would look the other side and look at the man and say, so what do you want me to do? And I'm like, look at me. I'm sitting right in front of you. I'm the one who has investigated the case. Talk to me. And it used to really frustrate me. Now I'm like, this is the reality. So let me just do what needs to be done faithfully, sincerely, and relentlessly, and get to where I need to get to. If I was relying on the affirmation from the world, then I wouldn't be able to get through a single day. So I'm focusing on getting through every single day.
Well, thank you for answering that, Anu. I can't imagine, because I've not been through what you're going through, but I can totally relate from the point of view of a woman, because, it's a male dominated space.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you walk in and you're articulate and you're beautiful and you understand, you're well qualified, you're empathetic, and you have that, women have a certain je ne sais quoi. They have a certain touch. They do things differently because, they're operating with a different energy. With no offense to men, it's just a fact, because as women,
You're created for that. I mean, that's how I see.
Exactly, because, we give birth. So it's a natural thing that we have. And I think it also breaks, when women are in a space like this, you've got to play to both sentiments. You've got to be that tough, strong exterior. Otherwise, like you said, you'll be eaten alive.
Oh, and yeah.
Then, right? And then you've got to be, this vulnerable, nurturing, mothering kind of person. Because when you're rescuing these people, I'm sure they're terribly traumatized.
Yeah.
And having a woman, in that space would be such a comfort for them, because it would be handled so differently, being a woman. And so, you're honoring both those spaces. And it's a really, really, it's a really tough thing to kind of negotiate within yourself. But I can see that, you're straddling it so well. You have that balance.
I try really hard, but you're right. You're absolutely right. And it's an honor to be able to navigate in that space. And I keep reminding this to myself, not everyone gets to do it. There are millions of women out there who are angered by this injustice around them, but they're in this confines of their homes, their society, their, just like, which is not different for you and me, I would think, Avril. Like, I mean, yeah. The reality is I still need to go home and make that meal. I mean, I just still need to, give in to the other societal expectations of, oh, the mother is not coming to put the girls to bed. Like, there are still all of those things which has been forced upon you. No, I love it. I mean, believe me when I say this, I love all of that. But when it becomes one of the other metrics that evaluate you as an, efficient mom or wife or woman in the society, it kind of becomes daunting and hard.
Absolutely. And I think somewhere, Anu, for women who are strong like yourself, sometimes it becomes tougher actually.
Oh.
Because, it's like living up to so many things. And most of those things are kind of perceptions from the outside world. And then at some point in time, if you don't check yourself, it's like you start believing it. And then you need to step away and say, whoa, just a second. This is not me. Yeah.
And then you fight yourself. You're like,
exactly.
And that's a harder battle to win. You're like, what are you doing, Anu? Like, oh, fine. Okay, good. Anyway.
Absolutely. Thank you for being so honest, Anu. I'm just enjoying this conversation. I hope this 1 hour never ends. So let me go on to my third question. So International Justice Mission Canada focuses on combating various forms of violence and injustice. What are some of the key initiatives or projects that you're currently spearheading to address these issues?
Well, to begin with, slavery is illegal almost everywhere, but over 50 million children, women, and men are trapped in modern day slavery around the world. And this number increased post-pandemic. Earlier it was 40.3. Post-pandemic, 10 million was added to the mix. So I know it's just the most daunting thing on the face of it, but it's solvable. I mean, less people are giving up on this problem even before we can get to the solution. So International Justice Mission strengthens justice systems to enforce the law, which deters criminals and protects people from violence. We strengthen the justice systems by offering training for government officials, combating slavery, equipping them to respond to cases sensitively and proactively. So together, we design improvements that serve survivors and deter other potential traffickers, basically shifting the fear from the victims to the perpetrators. All these years that I've been in the field, one of the things that I've observed is that survivors of slavery, modern day slavery, are afraid to walk into this police station, while the perpetrator would come in his or her Benz and just, slam the door open, walk into the police station like he owns it. And the power equation in that space is absolutely, well, for lack of better words, nauseating. And you see the victims of human trafficking afraid to even sit on the chair because they believe that they've not earned the.
Oh my God.
It is so painful to see when that happens. Anyway, I digress. So we rescue and restore victims by identifying brothels, homes, factories, fishing boats, farms, rock quarries. I mean, you think it, you dream it, you name it. People are getting trafficked into those spaces. So we partner with local police to conduct rescue operations. We then work with survivors on the path to restoration, because rehabilitation is a hard journey. If you've been trapped in slavery all your life, imagine you've been in a prison for 3 generations. Like your father was there, your grandparents were there, your father was there, your mother was there, you are there, your children are there, and suddenly you're told that you're free. What do you do with that life? You wouldn't know. A lot of these people go and kill themselves because somebody has been, I'm talking about prisons, somebody has been telling them what to do, how to do, can you eat, if you can eat, your wife is raped in front of you, your children are raped in front of you. And then suddenly, one fine day, you're told that you're free. So that journey of freedom, of rehabilitation, is probably a bigger feat than being rescued physically from that place itself. So that's a long journey that we walk with survivors on the path to restoration, developing care plans, focusing on physical health, trauma counseling, economic self-sufficiency, and breaking the cycle of violence which has been transferred from their perpetrators to their own homes. Domestic violence is always on the rise. And I say this, you're a slave, all right, but your wife has it harder if she's trapped in that with you. Anyway, so IJM brings criminals to justice by working alongside justice system officials to bring strong cases against traffickers and hold them accountable under local laws. We aid public prosecutors by collecting evidence and researching legal precedents, scale demand for protection by convening and equipping champions and grassroots community leaders and survivors of trafficking, to global corporations, to development institutions, to call on governments to protect people from slavery. And I think the most fascinating aspect of my work, I know I'm going on and on, is when survivors become leaders and lead this fight against slavery. When the survivor walks into the same brothel and says, don't worry, I know it feels impossible to be free, but look at me. And then walk them out of that space. When survivors are in parliaments talking against this injustice and seeking advocacy changes or legislative changes, when all of those things are part of what makes IJM a phenomenal organization to serve and also be served by. Other focus right now is also the war in Ukraine, making sure that we are at the borders in Romania, getting to the survivors who are fleeing the war before the traffickers do, and ensure that we are able to, free them from the cycle of violence that they land in. Because perpetrators are so creative. Like, when you see crisis, they see opportunity, and they get very creative. Like online sexual exploitation of children is another example. When we were supremely successful in Philippines to, crack down every single home, every single brothel where children were taken into, forced into sex trafficking, they got creative. They moved to the online space, and Canadians, Americans, Germans, like anywhere in the world. I saw a few people who are signing in from Lisbon, like anywhere in the world, you have $1.20, you could stream live sexual exploitation of children. And the youngest child that we have rescued was 2 months old, like unbelievable. So as we speak, Avril, there are 750,000 perpetrators right now, this second, online trying to look for sexual content from children, which has been made available by these perpetrators in Philippines. So this is the space that International Justice Mission is operating out of.
Wow. I mean, I don't think our lives are ever going to go back to being, la-di-da again when we listen to you speak and explain to us. I mean, you must be having such fantastic skills. Like, you must be having a skill set to kind of not let this get to you. I mean, when I'm thinking, 2 months old, I mean, I'm cringing, my skin is crawling. And I'm thinking, are we animals or are we people? Because I think animals are better than us. I mean, we seem to be evolved as a species, but have we really evolved? I mean, like somebody is saying, Esther saying, this is madness. I mean, before I come to asking you how you cope, because I mean, I would love to know how you cope, because it could be inspirational for a lot of us and a lot of people out there who think that our lives are difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, when I look at somebody like you, what I'm noticing is the IJM is not just rescuing people and stopping at that. They're rehabilitating them. They're giving them life skills. They are empowering them with showing them how to be independent, and then allowing them to take charge, become the force, become leaders. And then so you're literally passing the baton on to people who wouldn't have even dreamed that I would be leading something like this for the IJM. I mean, and that is something, Anu, that, as us coaches, we understand that everybody has a leader and has the answers within them. They don't need your help to find what they're looking for. They know what they're looking for because they have the wherewithal. We're just helping them navigate certain, difficulties in order for them to get to, this is it. And when I'm listening to you speak, I'm noticing that you are the embodiment of what we do, because you're not just saying, okay, I'm going to rescue you and now just do what you want, just go ahead. I mean, to think that somebody who's been entrapped in generations of slavery would prefer to commit suicide because they don't know what to do with their lives, because they've never tasted freedom, it's just, I don't even know what it's, I don't have any words for how that would feel. And for somebody like you to come along and to say, there is a way and let me help you. I mean, that is just phenomenally special. And what you said, about perpetrators, seeing opportunity. I mean, can you imagine you come out of a war only to be kidnapped into slavery, and then you're thinking like, what is worse? And you're there at the border. I mean, your personnel, your officers, whoever, all the forces that be, to actually say, come to the right place. And I'm here to help you navigate this disaster that you've been through. And these are the opportunities that we can offer you. And, I mean, it's just, I'm just wondering, how do you cope?
Well, when you see stories of transformations, like I mentioned earlier, it's so easy to get trapped in this. Oh my goodness, because these are everyday stories of violence that we have access to. And I call it the sentient paradox. Like human beings are probably the only creatures in the world who are capable of caring as much. That's what separates us from animals, like you mentioned, but they're also the only beings in the world who can cause as much as violence. Like and we see it when people take the kind of shapes that they take, and the extent that they would go to make money. The lack of conscience when it comes to exploiting babies, and make money in the whole process. But what gives me hope are the stories of transformation. Like there is absolutely nothing that that can, like Mahila is a story that I can think of. She was this 11-year-old girl who was she was sold by someone in her family, and she was sold into prostitution, forced prostitution. Just a kid, 11, my girls are 4. And she was supposed to service 100 men every month. Anyway, so she went through this horrendous life of being exploited day in and day out. And what was even more horrific was that men in uniforms, we have changed the name, of course, men in uniforms would come and rape her. So she was even have to go to the police to complain, even if there was a means to escape. There was no means. So when IGM found her and brought her out of that situation, she wouldn't open her mouth because she was mortified of them taking her back in. Yeah. The same uniformed men who abused her. But the process of rehabilitation and walking with her, working with her, allowing her to have a go at childhood once again. And today Mahila is a social worker. She goes back in and frees those girls out. We've had like the hardest rescue operations ever in some of those brothels where kids would be hid between 2x2 feet ceiling covers. They would be slid in just when they get information that IGM is coming. And so we've had to break down these walls and get the girls out of that situation. Like if they were there for more than an hour or so, they would probably die because there is no air to breathe. So yeah, even when we are pulling out the final kid, we're thinking maybe there is one more. The kind of trauma that comes with leading rescues like that for my team. But also followed by girls like Mahila, who just absolutely make it worthwhile to go back in. When you have seen or tasted success like that, Avril, you don't want to stop at it. You want to go and see those smiles. Whether it's like a 90-year-old grandma who has come out of generational bondage and seen, like one of the first things that this grandma did when I went back to see her in 2 days to start the rehabilitation work was the government gives a rehabilitation amount, a small amount. She went and purchased hair dye, used her hand, because she's never done that in her life, to color her hair, and came to me black-handed and said, I wanted to look young for you. So these things inspires me. I know it sounds like a weird, random, event, but those are life-changing events in my life. I would never trade that for anything else. Yeah, so it seems like, oh, do you ever want to go back? It's like, whoa, why wouldn't I? How couldn't I? Because that there is a scope. By 2030, we will protect 500 million people from violence. Absolutely. And I want to be part of that journey. Like, there is no way, nothing, the worst of perpetrators, the worst of stories in the field is not going to stop me from showing up every single day. It's hard. Heck yeah. What in life isn't hard? Being, and some of the people that I need to engage with donors, they're like, I know that's uncomfortable. Don't tell me. And you know what's more uncomfortable? Being a slave, being violated every single day. So those hard things inspires me, keeps me going, and helps me cherish what I have and what I'm seeking.
Wow. I mean, I don't really get gobsmacked a lot, but today, I mean, every answer that you give me, I'm like, okay, what do I say now? Where do I go from here now? Because I mean, you're literally shaking people out of our comfort zone. All of us, we're literally being shook by you out of our comfort zone to maybe do something in our own small way, which is what I want to ask you about towards the end. And we want to take a couple of questions. I'm just wondering, how do you leverage your position as a CEO to advocate for policy change and to raise awareness? Because if there's no awareness about human rights issues, how do you leverage your position as the CEO of IJM?
Yeah, one great example that I shared was when we started the conversation about this entire bill. Now, when the bill became the act, I was like, well, this is great, but how do we socialize it? How do we get the conscience of Canadians to a place where Canadians say, we won't have it? 93% of Canadians do not want their goods to be made by slaves. Like you mentioned earlier, Avril, but nobody knows. Nobody knows what to do. So I'm using my present position and the opportunity that I get to serve here as a means to bring people to the table. And there is no, like now corporations have lifted their hands up. I've got every single party in the government saying, okay, we need to find a way to do this. So a little ago, we signed the Canadian Declaration, which I'm hoping would be passed. A motion would be passed in the Parliament, which would make Canada the first country to take the lead against slavery and act on it. It's not just lip service, but translate that into how we engage with corporations around the world. And my desire and hope is that we are able to create a resource pot which would directly contribute to protecting 318 million people out of slavery, modern day slavery, specifically from South Asia, because that is where, human trafficking is a borderless crime. It is like it's a $150 billion industry. But if we are able to mortally wound the giant of slavery in a region like that, which is basically the corridor of business for most of the countries around the world, we have significantly created history. So my ambitious, and I'm 100% sure going to be fulfilled goal is to see Canada Declaration through in my position as the CEO. Honestly, I would do it even if I wasn't the CEO, but why not? Use the position that we have right now.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you have all of us here rooting behind you. I know it's just a small army, but our prayers and our wishes are with you because you exude passion. It's not about just confidence. It's not about just having a position as CEO. I can see your passion. It runs deep. It's not just empty talk. It's something that you truly believe in, because when you say to our fraternity that when you talk about slavery, people are uncomfortable. All of us on this call, Anu, are uncomfortable. But what you're doing is asking people to take a step back and to think, if you are uncomfortable hearing about it, just hearing about it, in a 1-hour conversation, what about that person and that little girl and that grandma who's experiencing it every day of their lives? And that's really making me sit up. And I'm really getting emotional, and I'm really thinking, what can we do? So if you would like to share with us, even later, a link where we can help, where we can contribute. Money is the easiest thing that we can give, and it's very needed. But also, if we can probably help in some other way, as coaches, as counselors, as because this is what we need. As coaches, we have a skill to help a person get to that next level. And it's just an open invitation for everybody on this call. You can either take it or don't take it. I mean, no one's going to force you to do anything. But I think as coaches, if we come into a conversation where we're only spectators, especially when we have a coaching opportunity for people who are underprivileged and who are suffering, I think then we really, really need to think, what did I get into this for? Is it just to coach the big corporates? Is it just to coach the rich entrepreneur? Is it just to coach ABC? Or can I be of more service and go beyond the finish line? So thank you for helping us really, really. I mean, I'm just voicing what I'm feeling, and I'm just with no implications to anybody else, but I would really love to be a part of this, because I think if I can help save one person's life.
Oh, absolutely.
I think, I could live in your shoes for one day.
Oh,
So
the shoe is available for taking. There are several pairs, because there is no way that either me or people like me within the organization can do this. Like, we do this in partnership with grassroots organizations, people who have been here, drawn to this fight because of how they've been oppressed themselves. So, and I keep telling people this, I was like, do not put a organization or a individual on a pedestal. Yes, it is hard, but we couldn't do it without you. So if Avril, you were thinking, I'm drawn to this fight, let's just join hands. There are amazing ways that you are inspiring people and helping people grow in their position of leadership. How can you use the gifts that you have and the influence that you have to make a difference? Happy to share details about that.
Yeah, you just brought an idea to my head. A lot of us coaches, are training leadership. And, corporates have the power, they have the voice to stand behind something like this from a purely humanitarian stance. It's not about what can I get, but what can I give? And we know so many of those corporates, and which is why I'm extending an open invitation on behalf of you, that if you can do something with corporates, or if you want to even get in touch with Anu on your own to probably help her in some way, I think it would be really time well spent. And I think you're going to feel good about not yourself, but about your purpose. You're going to feel good about your purpose, right? So I'm going to leave space for some questions from the audience, because I think some people are itching for me to stop speaking. But I'm going to ask, and I love speaking. It's the only thing I'm good at. So I'm going to ask you one last question, Anu, and then Kiva, you can get some questions ready, my dear, so we can open it out. So my last question for you, Anu, is what advice would you give to young women who aspire to pursue leadership roles in the corporate world, in law enforcement, in the fields of law, and related to social justice and human rights?
Just show up as well as you can. I mean, what we as women need to tell ourselves is to put aside the notion of perfection, the notion of balancing, the notion of societal ideals. There are people who need us, and what we have to offer to the world is perfectly offerable just as we are. So I think oftentimes in this space and in spaces outside, I feel I almost grieve along with other women who are stuck in the space of not being able to do something because they're like, what if it's not good enough? What I'm not good enough? These questions that nobody else is asking. Like, people are so focused on being wherever they want to be that they don't honestly care about the imperfect world that we are trying to thrive through. So showing up just as well as you can would be one thing that I tell any young girl who looks up to me. I'm like, just show up, stand up. And it's critical that women who are in positions of leadership, for us to do that, not only because it's the right thing to do, showing up, but because bringing diversity in a variety of ways of including gender makes us a better, stronger, more productive organization and a global community. It is important to me, and it's important to every single woman who's trying to figure out, how do I show up? To ensure that our daughters or our children our sons or daughters see that as the norm and not as the exception. The day when people look up to me and say, oh, you must be very independent. And I say, you're making it a very exclusive community, because there are women who are trying to break the other barriers just to be able to come show up. Let's be that for other women. Let's embrace the sisterhood. Let's invite more people to that journey. Let's not make it a competition. And let's feel comfortable to show up as we are, because that's all the world needs.
So well put, Anu. I don't want to spoil it by saying anything, because you've put it so aptly. I mean, showing up is the best thing that we could do. Would you be open to taking any questions now, Anu? Just
absolutely. Absolutely. And before I get to the questions, one of the things that you mentioned, Avril, reminded me, the corporations that you deal with, everybody is thinking of what is in it for me. There is absolutely, it need not just be from the humanitarian angle. There is this ESG aspect of every corporation, which is the environment, the governance, good governance, and slavery. Almost 99% of organizations take away the S, which is the slavery aspect of the corporation. So there is a whole lot of benefit for a corporation to embrace fighting this fight against modern day slavery, because it makes them look good. And it also allows them to conduct business internationally more fruitfully, because they would be a preferred organization. Specifically with Canada and sustainability is the slavery aspect. The S in ESG does not cover slavery. Technically, the documentation does, but corporations don't. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I mean, thanks for telling us that. I mean, I don't think I was aware of that sustainability also included slavery. I didn't relate that at all, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. And, you heard, Anu, people who work with corporates. I mean, think about it. Maybe you should just show up, like Anu said, totally up to you. Kiva, do you have any questions for Anu? Because I know that you mentioned that you had a question. Would you like to ask Anu a question, Kiva, till we get people?
Yeah, sure. So I think before I ask a question, Sai has put a question here. So I think
Sai has put a question.
Yeah, to take up his question. So the question is, how do you handle threats in this sector? This is so hard.
Yeah, it is hard. I mean, there is no, one of the things I remember discussing with my team was, well, we are putting our lives on the line, but it is absolutely worth putting our lives on the line for this. The fear becomes the in a way, but if we allow that to take away the opportunity of bringing respite to those who are in slavery, then that would be crippling. So I've lost my colleague. He was murdered along with a survivor who had to show up in court, and the driver who took them to the court proceeding. They were murdered brutally in Kenya. So this is the everyday reality of standing up against people who are more powerful than you are. But I think the worst consequence would be if we allow them to win. So we have excellent measures for when we go out to leading rescue operations. We do not do it in the absence of police. We have, it has been, we've been trained by the very best in the world, because as a founder would say, the poor deserve the best, those in poverty deserve the best. So we are trained extremely well to protect ourselves. However, it is not in the absence of the knowledge that this work is dangerous. We signed up for it because it is well worth it.
I think we should actually give her a round of applause, because I mean, this is just, I just can't wrap my head around this. I mean, it sounds like a movie. You see this in movies, people being taken out on the way to a courthouse. I mean, this is the first time I'm actually talking to a person who is saying this happened to a colleague of mine. I mean, Anu, I just don't know how to thank you for what you do. No words could suffice. I mean, just thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's not often that people are very interested in like what Esther mentioned, our inner, because there is this exterior that shows up every single day. But thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to share.
Oh, I mean, thank you for saying yes to coming here. I just want to ask, Sudhir says, commendable gratitude and salute to you and your team. Yeah, I mean, he put it much better than me. I'm losing words today. Somebody else saying, Esther said, the lobbying is so powerful, and I think you just attested to that. Sai is wishing you strength and blessings, and he says he'll be happy to support and help in any way. Kiva, I know you have a question, or you wanted to ask a question.
I wanted to ask a question. So I wanted to ask Anu, with the work that you and the team are doing, it's tough, it's challenging, and it's a lot of things that you are trying to change. So if you fast forward to, let's say, 10 years from now, what do you think would have shifted systemically because of what you're doing? What is the change that you see?
I don't even have to fast forward 10 years from now. From the time I came to now, we have seen systemic changes. We've been able to, in just the last 13 years, we've been able to exit countries because we have worked ourselves out of the job. The governments have taken over. We've been able to see zero prevalence in certain brothels that we have worked in, not brothels, where in the space of sex trafficking in certain countries, in the space of bonded labor or forced labor trafficking. We've seen zero prevalence in certain jurisdictions, exactly the jurisdictions that we worked in. So this is working. Nobody can question if the approach that International Justice Mission is working or not. Fast forward 10 years, you don't even have to fast forward 10 years. 2030 is sufficient time for us to see the protection of the, and therefore mortally wounding the giant of slavery, and therefore introducing systemic change, because without systemic change, this problem is not going to solve for itself. That is a no-brainer that we have understood. So this theory of change is something that was in question maybe 15, 20 years ago when IJM started this work. We have the proof now, and I'm convinced, whether you fast forward or stay in the present, we are happy to, declare that this is working. So.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, Kiva really asked a key question. Systemic change is the only way things can change. I mean,
absolutely.
It can't happen individually. And I'm so glad, and I can see that real, sense of accomplishment and a sense of happiness in your voice when you say, we don't have to
truly
10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marissa, you can go ahead and put your question, dear,
I found the question. Yeah, I found the question. Yeah.
Great.
So Marissa's asking, I'm curious to know if you can share a few specific strategies you use when the bad days, fear, and not the successful stories come out.
Okay.
Sorry, you broke for a bit there.
Yeah. If you could share a few strategies that you use when it gets tough, or when there are bad days or there's fear and there aren't so many successful stories.
Well, I had a bad day yesterday, and that's as close as I can. We have bad days often, very bad days often. But then that's when I jog my memory to the time that we have seen a wave of change in spaces where we thought things would not change. So memory is a good thing to turn to when things get tough. The memories of those who have been protected by the work that we are doing, the memories of those who are leading the change because of the impact of the work that we are doing, the memories of the time where we were only able to rescue a few hundreds, but now it has come to tens of thousands. So those memories are helpful. And it's so easy to slip into that pit of, feeling, oh, everything is going bad. So I keep telling myself, it's horrible now, I know, but it has been worse before. And we have always seen through. And that's the thing with life too, right? I mean, for those who have had experiences with the hardest of heartbreaks, when I was going through a very bad stage in my life, my dad and grandmother very wisely told me, give it 6 months, Anu, and then reflect on this day. And I was like, no, nothing is going to change. And I was like, but just the memory of where we are and where we could be and where we are at this point is good, I think.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for that brilliant answer. Marissa says, thank you so much from deep of my heart, Anu. So powerful and beautifully, simply accessed memories. Thank you. Everyone's like, there's so much of love for you. So I hope this love really strengthens your mission and strengthens your resolve. And Sudarshan says, you are my hero.
Thank you, Sudarshan.
Yeah.
I don't have to be.
I mean, she is a hero. She's not a heroine. She's a hero. Yeah. We're not, we're not going to like do this sex thing. You're a hero. And if we don't have any questions, Anu, I know that you're fantastically busy. It's just the start of the day. It's already 8:31, and I really want to be respectful of your time. So I'm just going to ask Kiva if she has any last few words that she'd like to share with us. I don't know if we've lost Anu again because her picture's stuck. Anu, can you hear us?
Now I can hear you.
Fantastic.
Yeah. You'd asked for links. I'm happy to send it.
Yes,
IPM.ca is one, but for those who are in different parts of the world, I'm happy to send specific links to how you can support. And
Anu, it would be really nice if you can ask, your PA who I've been in touch with to send me everything that needs to be sent out to people. And Kiva,
Sure.
who's in charge of communication, she'll make sure that all the people on this webinar are going to get those links as to how you can take your time, how to support, where to support, what to support, all the questions, if you can just make it easy, because I know that it's the beginning of the day for you. You're fantastically busy. And, knowing that you didn't have a great day yesterday, Anu, I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for not letting that stop you to be present today. I know you've been traveling. I know it's been hectic. I know that I've been trying to pronounce your last name, and I think I have it, and it's Tanjania Topal or something like that.
Good try. Thank you.
Try. Yeah. I'm trying to step out of my comfort zone with just your name. So
thank you.
I just wanted to just lighten the mood a little bit, because, sometimes, when we think about these things, there's a feeling of like, why is life so hard, and why is life so tough? But, somebody looking at you with your smiling face, doing the work that you do, I mean, I don't know what else to say, but a big thank you. Our hearts are filled with gratitude. We have something to really contribute towards now. As coaches, we really have to put our thinking caps on and really think about coaching in the spirit of coaching. Ram, our founder, talks about the spirit of coaching. And if our spirit doesn't come in for something as good as this, a cause as good and gracious and honorable as this, then a big question mark, at least in my mind. What am I doing this for? So thank you for sowing seeds of hope. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. And I wish that you have many more bright days ahead, many more stories. Break everything in your way, glass ceilings and concrete walls, and let's get everyone in this world the life that they deserve, a life of integrity, respect, and freedom. Thank you, Anu George. It's been a fascinating journey with you today, and I'm going to hand it over to Kiva now.
Okay, great. Anu, thank you so much. You've educated us. You've made us aware of the challenge that exists. And most importantly, like Avril said, you filled all of us with so much hope. So thank you so much for being you and for joining us today and inspiring all of us. And like Avril said, we hope our community, all of us can come together and join hands with you to take your work forward in our own little ways. So thank you so much once again for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. More power to you. More power to all the coaches on the call. You're doing something amazing. Working with people isn't easy. So thank you, each one of you.
Thank you so much,
Anu. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to getting an email with your links.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you, Avril. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks, Avril.
You're welcome. Bye, Kiva.
Bye-bye.